Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive,
Yeah.
where we're going to be exploring a topic that often gets overlooked,
Mm-hmm.
the struggles that adults on the autism spectrum face,
Yeah.
specifically anxieties around the fear of the unknown.
Right.
And we've got a really fascinating mix of sources for you guys today.
You do.
Blog posts, articles, website excerpts, all focused on providing support and insights.
Yeah, I was really struck by how much was out there.
Get ready
That
to uncover why this fear
important this topic is.
is so common, how it impacts lives,
Mm-hmm.
and most importantly, discover some practical strategies and resources
Yes,
for navigating it.
that's what we're here for.
So one of the things that really stood out to me while we were prepping for this deep dive was how this fear of the unknown,
Yeah.
it's not just about like trying new things, right?
It's so much deeper than that.
You know what I mean?
It really is.
Like there are deeper neurological and developmental reasons at play here.
Yeah. One of the things that really resonated with me when I was going through these sources was how often the fear of the unknown isn't just about trying new things.
Right.
Like you said, there are these deeper neurological and developmental reasons at play.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit because
Yeah,
on the surface, it might seem like someone is just nervous about change, right?
right.
But these sources suggest it's much more complex than that.
Way more complex.
It is.
One blog post I read shared a story about a woman who described her experience with sensory overload.
Oh, wow.
She said it felt like being constantly bombarded with information to the point where even something simple like grocery shopping became incredibly overwhelming.
Wow. That's such a powerful image. It
Yeah.
really makes you realize how everyday experiences can be so different for someone with sensory sensitivities.
Absolutely. And when you think about the fear of the unknown, it makes sense that unfamiliar situations could trigger that feeling of sensory overload,
Right.
leading to anxiety.
It's almost like having the volume turned way up on all of your senses and then being thrown into a chaotic environment where you can't control any of the dials.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It really is.
And on top of the sensory aspect, there's the social anxiety piece to consider as well.
Right.
For many autistic adults, navigating social cues and communication can be challenging.
Yeah?
So unfamiliar social situations can be incredibly stressful.
Definitely. And it's interesting because we talk about masking a lot on the show.
Yes.
And I'm curious how that ties into this fear of the unknown.
Mm,
Because if you're already putting so much effort into fitting in,
right.
wouldn't new situations just make that even harder?
That's a really insightful point, and the sources definitely highlighted how masking can be exhausting and actually increase anxiety.
Yeah.
Imagine putting on a performance every time you interact with the world.
Oh, absolutely.
That takes a huge toll.
Yeah.
And then facing the unknown on top of that,
Oh,
it
totally.
becomes even more daunting.
It's like being on stage all the time, right? Trying
Yep.
to predict and perform the right behaviors,
Okay.
which leaves very little energy for actually dealing with the new situation itself.
And to add another layer of complexity, our sources also point out that autistic individuals often engage in a lot of overthinking and rumination.
Okay.
They may overanalyze situations, fixating on every potential negative outcome.
So not only are you dealing with the sensory overload, the social anxiety, but you're also running through every possible what-if scenario in your head.
Precisely.
Oh, man.
And that can make navigating the unknown feel incredibly overwhelming, making it seem far more threatening than it might actually be.
This is where it gets really interesting for me because
Yeah.
the sources don't just leave us hanging with the problem.
Right.
They actually offer some practical strategies
I do.
for navigating this fear.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that instead of avoiding the things that trigger our fear,
Yeah?
the idea is to approach them strategically,
Okay.
gradually building up our resilience.
So it's not about jumping into the deep end, but rather taking things one step at a time.
Exactly. One of the sources used the analogy of slowly acclimating yourself to cold water
I like that.
instead of just cannonballing in.
Yeah.
If new social situations are scary, you might start with very brief interactions.
Okay.
Maybe just saying hello to a cashier
Right.
or asking a coworker a quick question. Then gradually increase the complexity, maybe joining a club or attending a small gathering.
I love that.
Yeah,
It's like building up those fear muscles through consistent practice.
exactly.
But what about those moments when the fear is really intense?
Mm-hmm.
Are there tools for managing anxiety in the moment?
Yes, there are, and that's what we're going to talk about next.
Okay, great.
We'll dive into some of those tools and techniques right after the break.
That's where mindfulness and meditation come in, right?
Yes,
Several of the articles talked about how powerful these techniques can be for calming the nervous system.
that's right. By focusing on your breath, bringing your awareness to the present moment, you can create a sense of calm amidst the storm of anxiety.
Yeah.
It helps you shift your focus away from those spiraling thoughts and ground yourself in the here and now.
It's like hitting the pause button on all that overthinking and
Exactly.
just allowing yourself to be present. I can see how that would be so helpful
Yeah.
in those overwhelming moments.
Yeah.
But what if those negative thought patterns keep popping up,
Right.
even when you try mindfulness?
Yeah.
How do you address the root of the anxiety?
That's where therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be really effective.
Okay.
The sources explain that CBT helps you identify and challenge those negative thought patterns that contribute to the fear. You work with a therapist to reframe those anxieties and develop more balanced perspectives.
So it's like having a coach in your corner, helping you train your brain to respond to those anxieties in a healthier way.
Yeah.
And speaking of training, I was intrigued by the mention of social skills training. A few of the sources highlighted how this can be a game changer for some autistic adults.
Absolutely. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Social skills training focuses on very specific areas like
Right.
reading social cues, starting conversations, and maintaining interactions.
Right.
These are often things that neurotypical people seem to just know instinctively.
Mm.
But for autistic individuals, it can be incredibly helpful to have direct instruction and practice in these areas.
It's like taking a course in the unwritten rules of social interaction,
Exactly.
which is so important
It is.
because as you build those skills, it naturally reduces the fear and uncertainty in social settings, right?
Absolutely. It's about equipping yourself with the tools to navigate those situations with more confidence.
Yeah.
And that can have a ripple effect, reducing anxiety in other areas of life as well.
Now that we understand why this fear is so common and some strategies for dealing with it in the moment, let's talk about acceptance and commitment therapy,
Yes,
or ACT. This approach seemed really different from the others,
it is.
and I'm curious to learn more.
ACT is a really interesting approach because instead of trying to eliminate fear entirely,
Okay.
it focuses on accepting those uncomfortable feelings and choosing to take action despite them.
Okay.
It's about identifying your values and moving towards what matters to you, even when it's challenging.
So it's like acknowledging the fear is there,
Yeah,
but choosing not to let it control you.
exactly.
It's more about saying, okay, fear, I see you there, but I'm not going to let you call the shots.
Exactly. It's recognizing that you're bigger than your fear and that you have the power to choose your actions.
I like that.
And speaking of finding that power, one thing that came up repeatedly in these sources was the importance of building a strong support network.
Yes. Whether it's family, friends, autism support groups, or therapists specializing in autism,
Right.
having those people you can turn to for understanding, encouragement, and practical help makes all the difference. I was especially heartened to see how many resources are available specifically for autistic adults.
That's what's so encouraging about diving into these sources.
Yeah.
They highlight online forums as a fantastic starting point.
Yeah.
These offer a sense of community and a platform to share experiences, ask questions, and get advice from others who truly understand.
It's so valuable to know you're not alone in facing these challenges.
Exactly.
What other resources did you come across? So many of these sources emphasized advocacy groups and organizations
Right.
dedicated to supporting autistic adults.
Mm-hmm.
They offer valuable information and resources and can even connect people with local support groups or services.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
It's amazing to see how many resources are out there.
Right.
A real reminder that even though the challenges can feel isolating,
Absolutely.
there's a whole community ready to offer support and guidance.
That's one of the most important takeaways from all of this research.
Yeah.
The fear of the unknown is common for adults on the spectrum,
Right.
but it doesn't have to define your life.
It's not a life sentence of anxiety and avoidance.
Nope.
It's about recognizing that this fear often stems from a world that isn't always designed with neurodiversity in the mind.
Right.
But you don't have to let it dictate your experiences or limit your potential.
Well said. And that brings us to a final thought to leave you with today.
Yeah.
The sources repeatedly emphasize the importance of self-advocacy.
Okay.
What does this mean to you?
Right.
And how can you apply it in your own life to better manage anxieties and create a more supportive environment?
It's about understanding your needs are valid, your voice matters, and you have the right to ask for what you need to thrive.
Yes.
This deep dive has given you the knowledge.
Absolutely.
Now it's time to take action.
Remember, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep advocating for yourself.